welcome back to another exciting episode and very insightful episode of Me and My Health Up. I'm your host, Anthony Hartcher. I'm a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being, and I will be doing that for you today on nutrition or some form of nutrition. It is on Calories 101, understanding energy intake and expenditure. Yes, there's a lot of literature out there on calories, and we hear a lot about calorie counting apps and devices. So I'm going to shed some light in terms of understanding energy expenditure and energy intake. So energy intake is from food. Energy expenditure is your body utilizing the food energy and generating movement from that, essentially, is what we do. Whether it be digesting food, we are actually processing the food we eat, and we are extracting the energy out of that food. But it requires energy to actually extract the energy out of the food. And so, yes, it can be a bit of a complicated topic, but I'll do my best to simplify it today. And so, what is a calorie? A calorie is a form of measuring energy of food. And so scientists, essentially what they did was grab the food in a sealed apparatus. They then heated that, or burnt it. They burnt that food, and they still do it today to measure the calorific value of that particular food. And they're measuring how much energy is expended to lift 1 liter of water 1 degree. Okay, so that's how a calorie is, or the calorific value of food is calculated. Now, is that indicative as to what's going to happen when you eat that food inside your body? No, it's not. It's just to give us some idea of approximately how much energy is in that food. But does that equate to you extracting that much energy from that food when you digest it? No, it doesn't. We have different efficiencies in terms of that same bit of food. One person can extract more energy from it and someone else doesn't. And you've probably heard of those endomorphic body types or those exomorphic body types. And you've probably heard of fast metabolism and all these things that come into it, and think, well, why can't I eat as much as that person eats? And obviously you like food if you're asking that question, and you're thinking, it's that thing of they do this and I do this, and yet I'm not progressing in terms of my health goal, and they seem to be looking great, and all those sort of things. Well, there's many factors that come into play in terms of how to burn that energy more efficiently, and that, around exercise, around movement, in terms of how your body utilizes the intake of food, or uptakes, converts that food to energy that's useful for you. Which is what our cells do. They get the energy and we create ATP, which helps us generate movement, which allows us to do what our physiology wants to do in terms of manufacture and recycle and all those great things that our body does. Makes chemicals, it makes neurotransmitters, it communicating amongst cellular cells and all these sorts of things that it needs to manufacture. It needs to do repair work. So all this requires energy, and hence why we need to eat food. Now, in terms of the macro, what's the calorific value of the macros we consume? Well, let's start with what's a macro. So a macro is your fats, your protein, and your carbohydrates, okay? The macros. And now, what is the calorific value of them? Let's start with protein, for example. There is 4 calories per gram, okay? And you're probably thinking, but I talk in kilojoules and calories and all that. So again, kilojoules is just another measure of energy of food, and the conversion factor, I think, is about 4.18. So if you times the calorie by 4.18, you'll get the kilojoules, okay? Just to complicate things. Or you can just go into your app and then choose that you want the unit of measure in kilojoules as opposed to calories. And yes, calories and kilocalories are the same, just to make it all the more confusing for you, how much each of these macros contain in terms of energy. So 1 gram carbohydrates will give you 4 calories. 1 gram of protein will give you 4 calories. Now, 1 gram of fat will give you 9 calories. Okay, so every 1 gram of fat you consume, it's 9 calories of energy. It's very energy dense. Okay, so fat is very energy dense. Hence why when we started looking at obesity and how to break the trend and how to reduce obesity, what was done is essentially remove fats from food. However, what we realized, we took the fat out and put more carbohydrates in there, and the epidemic or pandemic didn't go away. We still have an overweight obesity problem today. And, a simple reason for that is we just consume more calories than what we expend. It's simple. And as much as people say it's not that simple, it's not as simple as energy in, energy out sort of thing. Well, the equation is actually energy in equals energy out plus accumulation. So anyway, that's probably a more precise energy equation. However, yes, there's different things that can, slow down our ability to burn energy. There's certain, such as our metabolic rate, which we'll get to. But the other thing I wanted to cover in terms of is the energy value of alcohol. Okay, so guess what? 1 gram of alcohol is what that equates to. It equates to 7 calories. Okay, so alcohol is up there in terms of energy density with fat. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. People consume alcohol, they just drink it and drink it and drink it. However, alcohol, the actual alcohol, is very calorie dense. We extract a lot of calories from alcohol. So if you're consuming large amounts of alcohol, then that could be the reason why you're either not losing weight or you potentially could be gaining weight, is the alcohol consumption. It's very easy, if just having a binge drink on alcohol is to consume an extra meal. Very simple. A bottle of wine, for example, is like having equivalent to an extra meal per day. So you have a bottle of wine at night, it's not just a liquid, it's not just a drink. There's another whole meal there, okay? And I'm talking about that meal being around 500 calories, okay? You might think you're just having 3 meals a day plus a bottle of wine, but you're actually having 4 meals a day, or in terms of equivalent calories. So that's what it is. Now, in terms of, you've probably heard of this thermic value of food. So we actually expend energy breaking down the food in order to extract energy from it, like I mentioned earlier. And so there is a thermic value of food, and more fibrous the food is in terms of carbohydrates. So the more amount of fiber, the body works harder to extract that energy. That's why it's better to eat whole foods than processed foods, because the body does less work with processed food and extracts more energy from it. Whereas higher fiber foods, the body is less efficient at extracting energy from it, and it has to work harder to get that energy. Okay, that more energy is expended to get that equivalent energy from the food. So I hope this is making sense. So the takeaway is to eat whole foods or non-processed foods. So the whole foods are going to have a higher thermic value. So that means use more energy to extract the energy from that food. Okay. And the other thing is your body won't be as getting high utilization in terms of maximum extraction of energy from that food. That may have, that bit of food may have so many calories in terms of what they're measured in the lab. Your body's not extracting all that energy. So you're actually consuming most likely less, highly likely less in terms of what your body actually extracts in terms of energy. And so there was a study done that showed that of 2 people eating the same food, there was 2 different groups. 40% of those group, or 40% of the participants actually extracted less energy than the other 60%. So they're your exomorphs, and then you've got your endomorphs, the ones that are extracting more energy. Okay, it is what you are in terms of your constitution, and some people just have much greater utilization or energy efficiency in terms of converting the more amount of energy from that, or extracting the maximum amount of energy from that food. So those endomorphs are fantastic when there's a famine, okay? And this unique human attribute to these types of people. Back in history, these, or in terms of your ancestry, there would have been some sort of famine that they were exposed to, and your body's adapted to that. So yes, like there was all sorts of famines that went all throughout history, but there was particular big famines, and as a result of that, the endomorphs had a higher survival of, getting through, had a higher survival rate of getting through. Hence, more endomorphs got through those famines and were able to reproduce. The exomorphs, the ones that were very inefficient at converting the energy from food, and there was less food available, more of those people died off. In terms of human evolution, there's probably more, maybe, I don't know. I haven't looked this up, but there could be more of the endomorphs around. More of that, it is 60%, 60-40 from that study. So yes, your energy utilization might not be as great, or it could be better than your neighbor or who you're comparing yourself to. So there's that side of things. I just mentioned the thermic value of food. So eat more whole foods. Therefore, your body's got to work harder to extract that energy from that food. And so there's that whole processing of trying to extract the energy and break down the fiber. And that's why people say that eat more celery. There's only so much celery you can eat because there's so much work goes into breaking those fibrous grains, those fibrous structures of the celery. There's very little. It's like water and fiber, water and insoluble fiber. There's very little calories actually in it, and your body spends a whole lot of breaking it down. But you can't live on celery. Okay, it doesn't have all your nutritional intake. So yes, it may be a bit of a fad in terms of just consuming huge amounts of celery to reduce your overall calorific intake, but there's better ways of doing it. There's healthier ways of doing it, which I'll get around to. So in terms of other implicating factors around your metabolic rate is your thyroid. So how well your thyroid is functioning or not functioning can govern your ability to metabolize or extract the energy from food. In terms of the your metabolic rate around your thyroid, then what I recommend is managing stress. So managing stress is fundamental, okay? So managing stress really helps drive better metabolic rates. The ability to burn, ability to expend energy is done through managing your stress. So the more stress you're under, the slower your ability to burn through that food. So what also needs to happen in order to optimize thyroid function is consuming protein. So if you're under consuming protein, then again, and carbohydrates, so there's a mixture of carbohydrates and protein that need to be consumed. And if you consume carbohydrates the right amount, so at least 150 grams per day of carbohydrates, and this it's dependent on the individual, but generically the research says you want to be consuming between 100 and 150 grams of carbohydrates per day. And so this doesn't work well with keto. And the other one is protein, consuming protein each meal. So making sure you do that, and you'll optimize thyroid function as well as managing your stress. So managing your stress through mindfulness techniques we've spoken about a lot on this podcast, but just being more in control of your stress, the way you see things too. I've mentioned before on previous episodes, so your perspective. So if you're only seeing the negative of that particular event, ask yourself, what is the positive? How is it serving you? And what's most important to you? How is it serving you in all areas of life? If you keep asking yourself and balancing that perception, then that emotional energy that's expended through that negative thinking will dissipate. Your body will dampen the emotional response, and that will enable you to make better decision-making processes, but and also better balance that thyroid function in terms of supporting the thyroid by managing the stress and not letting the stress get away from you. So yes, thyroid, and there's particular nutrients that are really important for thyroid function, such as iodine. Getting adequate amounts of iodine in your diet. Where's iodine from? It comes from the sea. So making sure you are eating some form of sea life in order to get that iodine. There's also iodine is added or fortified in food. So I think it's added to white bread, but I definitely know it's added to table salt. So there's iodine added to table salt. Pretty sure it's highly processed foods generally have fortification because they strip everything out of it. So it possibly is in white bread, but certainly in table salt or iodinized table salt. And it's also in plentiful amounts of anything coming from the sea, whether it be seaweed, whether it be seafood. Iodine is in that. Now, what else is important in terms of micronutrients for the thyroid? I mentioned the macros, which is carbohydrates and protein. So you've got the iodine, which is a micronutrient. You've got selenium, Brazil nuts are high in selenium. Eating nuts and seeds, going to contain some form of selenium, also from the sea as well. And zinc. So zinc's in zinc, protein generally go together. So you'll get zinc from eating meats. If you don't eat meats, then nuts, seeds, legumes, grains contain zinc. So making sure you're consuming iodine, zinc, selenium, stressing less, and you're consuming some carbohydrates and protein. So in essence, you need a well-balanced diet in order to have healthy thyroid function and to have a healthy metabolic rate. So that's really important, managing your stress. Also, that letting go and not holding on, that attaching. So attaching yourself to certain outcomes or fantasies or the way the world should be and it's not. So that sort of holding on will also result in that thyroid slowing. So the ability to let go, such as being able to let things, I guess, knowing that time will pass, things will get better, not getting too attached to certain outcomes or possessions, then that will also help with a healthy thyroid function. So that's that metabolism side of things. I've mentioned the thermic value of food. So what has a highest thermic value of food? I did mention that. So the highest thermic value of food is protein. So a lot of work goes, I mentioned in terms of the fiber, so breaking down the fiber in order to extract the energy. But protein has a really high thermic value, hence why it's, people encourage protein consumption when someone wants to lose weight, because you consume more protein, you got more energy going into that protein in order to extract energy. So yes, protein is a form of energy. It's not protein. There's just as many calories per gram of protein as what there is carbohydrates, and we get so carried away with the carbohydrate side of things that but the thing is, the satiety, you're going to get greater satiety through eating larger amounts of protein. Hence, overall, you'll eat less if you eat larger amounts of protein versus carbohydrates. In order to get that same satiety, you need to consume more, and overall, you're going to consume more calories. So that probably explains why these high protein diets work, is because you're more satisfied and you end up eating less. But you can also eat a well-balanced diet and still consume less calories through like a process of mindful eating. So really embracing the food for what it is, and sitting down, eating it slowly, eating it with people, putting down your knife and fork in between mouthfuls, having a bit of conversation. So that nice slow way of eating, like you find when you go to have a 3-course meal, what you realize is that you end up consuming less over the 3 courses, but you feel very satisfied. It's because you've allowed your body to communicate that, yes, you're full. There's a 20-minute lag between when you think you're still hungry and you keep eating to when your body says, oh, you're full, and then you've realized you've overeaten. So, that 20-minute lag is going to vary from person to person, but there is a lag time between that satisfaction. So the slower you eat, you'll realize that you eat less because you get the satiety signals. Also, minimizing the variety in your diet can also help eating less. So that sort of more monotyping eating, which isn't very, if you're very into food, then you like the variety, but variety also drives overeating. So if you're sort of more mono eating, eating the same foods, and you can consider that boring, but certainly it is a good way to eat less if you're looking to lose weight. Is eat less variety. Just be boring. You won't want to eat. Like if eating, like, there's only so many carrots you could eat, for example. Before they're just boring, you don't want to have them anymore. So the more variety in your diet, the more you'll enjoy each of the different flavors and end up consuming more. So the less variety you have, the less you'll consume. But you want to have some variety in a sense that you are getting proteins, carbohydrates, you're getting, vegetable, consumed in that process. It's not just all protein. And so it is finding that overall well balanced, but being able to also balance your lifestyle in order to support that food consumption. So I've covered a lot about the intake of energy and how our body extracts the energy from the food we eat. What I haven't covered much about is the expenditure. So when we do work, okay, so work is moving, okay, it's essentially moving a distance. That's how we generate work. By me moving my arm, talking to you in this podcast, I'm doing work. I'm burning energy in that process. I'm burning energy talking. I'm burning energy through thinking, obviously running my body. There's energy burns, and that's the basal metabolic rate. So what's how much energy is consumed at rest? But I'm not at rest. Rest is obviously lying down, not moving. So your body's consuming energy, manufacturing, recycling, repairing, doing what it needs to do to keep you alive, but you're not moving. Okay, so your basal metabolic rate is your rate or energy burns at rest, and that's like at nighttime when you're sleeping. That's, you are expending energy at nighttime, staying alive. Okay, you're breathing, your heart's beating. There is some movement going on in your body, but you're not actually physically moving your body. So the physical movement of your body expends further energy. Okay, and this is what we refer to as movement or exercise. And so, yes, the more you move your body, the more energy you expend. Now, there's different rates of movement. The more intense the rate of movement, the higher the energy consumed. Okay, the slower the movement, less energy consumed. It's really logic and basic. And I think we overcomplicate things when we talk about weight loss. It is really simple. The less you eat, the more you move your body, the greater the energy deficit, and yes, you will lose weight over time. Now, sometimes people don't allow enough time for that to actually take place or for you to actually notice the effects. Yes, you're losing weight, but they become a bit distorted in terms of the way in which we measure weight loss. So, we stand on some scales, okay, but we could be in the process of moving, generating or building muscle and losing body fat, but the scales don't change. And so, yes, standing on some scales isn't a great way to work out because most people in this process, they're happy to gain muscle, but they want to lose body fat. Now, your scales are not going to tell you what's happening in relation to body fat reduction and muscle gain, are they? So unless you have those special bioimpedance scales, and they're not accurate, but they're good from a relative point of view, the best accuracy in terms of understanding your body composition, in terms of the amount of fluid, the bone density, your muscle mass, and your fat mass is a DEXA scan, DEXA scan. And you can get one of those done. It's an X-ray. So again, you're going to be exposed to some radiation, but it's the most accurate way to work out your body composition and where that fat is in terms of, where is it occupying on your body. DEXA scan is the best way. So this is, I think, really important, is that you actually allow time. So yes, move your body more. The more intense you move your body, the greater the energy expenditure, the more you work. So the harder it is, the more energy you're expending. So high intensity interval training is hard work. You really sweat. You are working hard. You're expending more energy. Yoga is a form of movement, but it's much slower. Okay, so you're not expending as much energy as someone doing high intensity interval training. Okay, so you're going to consume more calories per period of time in a more high intense class. It could be boxing, it could be high intensity interval training, could be sprinting, whatever. The higher the intensity, you're going to burn more calories per unit of time. So in terms of walking and yoga, yes, you'll need to do it for longer in order to expend the same amount of energy. Okay, but some people like that. They prefer that. They don't want that sweaty form of exercise. They don't like it. Some people love working hard because they feel good when they're working hard. You release more endorphins, okay, and that can be also another feel good from the exercise. But there's benefit to yoga in terms of the mindfulness that goes with it. And walking, you can do it socializing, so you can, get double the benefit. You can catch up with someone as well as walk. So again, it's finding the balance that's working for you, but generally the more intense the exercise, higher energy expenditure per unit of time. Now, in terms of what you're burning, so there's this thing around, am I burning fat? I want to burn fat. And so the slower the exercise, the more you'll get into fat burning. But overall, it's calorie consumption is what we're after. So you'll lose weight more rapidly the more intense the exercise. However, if you're, again, if you've got that mindset of attachment and hanging on to things and hanging on to resentment and things like that, that can really affect your ability to lose weight. You will lose it, but it just becomes slower. So if you start doing this whole thing holistically, you'll get more greater or more optimal weight loss. Okay. So when we're to get into fat burning, okay, so fat burning will occur at slower rates of exercise because in order to burn fat, we need more oxygen. we can only bring in more oxygen at those slower forms of working. So the lighter the exercise, you'll get more into fat burning. However, if your overall goal is to reduce fat, then burning more calories overall is more important. So high intensity, where you burning different types of fuels, fat fuels, you're getting into glycogen stores, you're burning blood glucose. So you burning carbohydrates, fats together, and you'll be doing that in yoga as well, but there'll be a higher percentage towards burning the fat or working on those fat stores. Now, in terms of, so that's the expenditure. I've mentioned the intake. What are the other implicating factors to calories and not being able to lose weight? Well, there's a lot, because when I did research a few years ago in my studies, I found that there was 108 factors that implicated overweight or obesity or weight gain. And it's because of all these social influences. Like, we walk down the street, we get the smells coming out of restaurants, okay? And those smells can drive satiety, not satiety signals, but hunger signals, okay? It drives ghrelin and telling us, oh, there's food nearby. Maybe I should think, do I need to eat? Oh, but I'm feeling a bit hungry now, because your body smelt the food. It starts producing digestive enzymes from the smell of food. And we wouldn't have had this back in the day, in the prehistoric days, right? Because we weren't walking past restaurants when we were going to hunt and gather, and the foods weren't processed, so there wasn't as much aromas coming from them, right? So when you see an animal in the distance, there's not much. It's not the meat aroma. It's not cooking, right? But you walk past a restaurant, the meat's cooking, and the aromas, the fats, the oils, your nose picks up, and you think, oh, that smells good. But an animal in nature, it's not, the only attractive thing is that I need to eat it, because if I don't catch that prey, then I could potentially not survive, because I need food to keep living. And so this is the whole thing about the availability of food is really implicating us in terms of consuming excessive calories. And that's what we're doing. We're consuming excessive calories and we're not expending as much as we used to. We've got more sedentary jobs. So we've got to make more effort to move our bodies, okay? So find ways in which you can make more effort to move your body. So question, do I really need to drive? Can I walk there? I always do that. I end up finding that I'm walking further today than ever before because I think it's actually not that far when I think about it. What can I do to maximize that time? I'll do it with someone. I'll walk with someone. I'll walk with my children, walk with my wife. I'll do some socializing or some connecting whilst I'm walking. Or if I can't do that, I'll listen to a book. I get a book read to me whilst I'm doing that walk. So I'm educating myself. I'm, enlightening my knowledge and able to articulate this message to you through reading more books, or not reading, but listening to more books in that walk. Or you can listen to a podcast and educate. You might be listening to this podcast whilst you're walking. So good on you. Okay. You're increasing your health knowledge as well as walking. So keep doing that. Keep doing that. It's thoroughly recommended. When there's a choice between escalators and stairs, go the stairs. Elevators and stairs, go the stairs if it's only level 2, level 3, level 4. That's fine. Level 30, yeah, I can understand why you might want to go the lift. Okay, you might not have an hour to get up 30 levels or whatever it takes to get up 30 levels. But 1 or 2 levels or 3 levels or even 4 levels, it's okay to walk. Once upon a time, 4-level buildings didn't have lifts. Today, a lot of these 4-story buildings do. Back in the day, they didn't. So 3 and 4-story buildings, we walked. You always walked. You might be living in one of those buildings at the moment without a lift. And you're getting more energy by walking upstairs. So look for those incidental ways in which you can increase movement, okay? In terms of reducing energy intake, I was mentioning walking down the street. I suggest to take paths that don't walk past food shops. So you might want to think about your path. So when I'm walking down to the beach from my house, there's a path via lots of food and cafes. I choose not to go down that street. I choose to go down this street that doesn't have food and cafes. Okay, so I'm not tempted by the smells. I'm not thinking about food because I'm just in nature. So again, think about where you're going, the paths you're taking. If there's a favorite takeaway place that has delicious burgers, then maybe find different paths around that and try different things. And again, it is a bit of making a bit of effort to avoid these temptations. They are temptations. We're constantly tempted when we're watching ads. So avoid watching ads. Ads are full of food, beverages. Okay. So avoid watching ads. You can shop online today. At least shopping online, you're not walking past more and more food outlets and thinking about you need to eat whilst you're shopping or something like that. So there's lots of different ways in which we can minimize these distractive forces that tempt us into eating. And yes, I get tempted into eating too if they're around me. Minimizing the snacky foods around the house can be helpful. Have it whole food. So therefore you've got to work in order to get something out of that food. You actually got to do some work. So yes, cooking requires energy expenditure. Cleaning the house requires energy expenditure. Doing yard work requires energy expenditure. So some of these things we've delegated because we don't like doing. But if you're looking to lose weight, maybe take it back for a period of time to increase your energy expenditure. Okay. So these are just all little tips, and it's really simple. As I said at the start of this episode, energy in equals energy out plus accumulation. If you're not getting as much out as you're taking in, then that leads to accumulation. So what we want to do is reduce what goes in, and there's different ways of doing that. I've shared some ways to reduce the temptations. Also, cutting out meals can affect metabolic rate, okay? Because initially, but over time, your body will get used to it. So initially, you may find that cutting out a meal hasn't made no difference, but you need to wait time, longer periods of time, even up to a month or 6 weeks to things to start to, your body thinks it's normal not to have that extra meal. So again, give yourself time, reduce energy intake, by mindful eating and some of the other things I shared today, and increase energy expenditure through activity. So that's it for today. I hope it was helpful in terms of Calories 101, understanding energy intake, energy expenditure. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with others that could also benefit from the education. I really appreciate you sharing the podcast. Leave a review so that it extends this reach to more people. I really want to help enhance and enlighten the well-being of more people. And also, go to the link and join the me&my Health Up Club, or even inquire about the me&my Health Up Club by emailing me or going to the link in the show notes. Me&my Health Up Club is a club of like-minded people where I share exclusive information. We also come together socially in our local areas. And I also give additional benefits through being a me&my Health Up Club member, such as discounts to healthy food produce, healthy products, supplements, and there's lots of knowledge that I share that I don't share in public forums. That's only exclusive to club members, and you also get to meet like-minded people. So check out the link and join the me&my Health Up Club. Thank you. Podcast disclaimer. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare, or professional advice and are provided for general information purposes only. All care is taken in the preparation of the information in this podcast. Connected Wellness Proprietary Limited, operating under the brand me&my Health Up, does not make any representations or give any warranties about its accuracy, reliability, completeness, or suitability for any particular purpose. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it are not to be used as a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, psychiatric, or any other mental health care or healthcare in general. Me&my Health Up recommends you seek the advice of a doctor or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Inform your doctor of any changes that you may to your lifestyle and discuss these with your doctor. Do not disregard medical advice or delay visiting a medical professional because of something you hear in this podcast. This podcast has been carefully prepared on the basis of current information. Changes in circumstances after publication may affect the accuracy of this information. To the maximum extent permitted by the law, me&my Health Up disclaims any such representations or warranties to the completeness, accuracy, merchantability, or fitness for purpose of this podcast and will not be liable for any expenses, losses, damages incurred, indirect or consequential damages or costs that may be incurred as a result of the information being inaccurate or incomplete in any way and for any reason. No part of this podcast can be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in a form without prior permission of me&my Health Up.